Hello, and welcome to the We Are the Medicine podcast. This podcast is a place where we discuss a wide variety of topics, from psychedelics and other plant medicines to sovereignty and spirituality. This is a space where we have raw and vulnerable conversations and explore the mysteries of our universe with the intention of empowering listeners and guiding you to ask the questions that will help you come into a deeper resonance with your truest essence. I'm your host, Serena Rose. Now let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of the We Are the Medicine podcast. I'm so excited to be here. This is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and we finally making it happen. So thank you so much for being here with me and tuning in. So today we're going to be talking about my very first ayahuasca experience. This actually took place in November of 2021. And before we get into my journey, I really just want to give you a little bit of information about ayahuasca for those of you who aren't really familiar with it. So ayahuasca is a plant medicine, or what some would call a psychedelic, which is actually a kind of tea that is brewed using two different plants. One is the ayahuasca vine, and the second plant will differ depending on what tradition you are working with. I think one of the more common ones is the chacruna leaf. Essentially, from my understanding, the ayahuasca vine makes DMT orally active. So whatever plant is used along with the ayahuasca vine can very much change the kind of experience that you have, because each plant has their own kind of energy to it. For example, in certain traditions in the region of Colombia, they work with a different plant other than chacruna. And from what I've heard, the experiences with this form of ayahuasca, which they oftentimes call yahe, can have a more masculine spirit to it. So that's just from my understanding. And in some traditions, they'd call ayahuasca the grandmother spirit. So you may or may not hear me referring to ayahuasca as she or her, but this does not mean that ayahuasca is a woman. It just means that in the experiences that I've had, I have experienced this plant as more of a feminine energy. And that could change at any point. And I think it is important for us to not personify plants, because it can greatly diminish the kind of experiences you can have. Ayahuasca is a plant that has been used by indigenous people in Central and South America for a very, 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 very long time. It is a truly ancient tradition, which I feel in a lot of ways is being remembered and reawakened at this time, because the planet really needs healing. So I think that's why a lot more people are feeling called to work with this plant. And I could get a lot deeper into this and talk about the ways that the indigenous people discovered ayahuasca and things like that, but we can save that for another episode. Let me know if that's something that would interest you. So before we get into my experience, I also just want to preface a little bit so you understand kind of the way I'm speaking about the plant. Like I said, you might hear me refer to ayahuasca as she or her. You might also hear me say things like, I heard the plant saying something to me or talking to me. And to some people, this might sound absolutely insane, but it's a real experience, and it is something that I have actually experienced. So you can think I'm crazy if you want, that's fine. But for the majority of people who have worked with plant medicines, especially ayahuasca, there is definitely this sense that there is a spirit there with you. So take it as you will. So let's go ahead and get into my experience. So I went to a retreat in Costa Rica that is led by my friends Aaron and Victor's wife Patty. And it's such a beautiful space, and the medicine people or shamans that we work with are so amazing and so in integrity and just so full of love and light, and I'm just so grateful for them. So in this retreat, we have 2 nights where we sit with ayahuasca and 1 day where we drink Huachuma, which is also known as San Pedro. That is for a whole other episode though. So let's just get right into it. I was definitely pretty nervous going in, which is completely normal. Even people who have drank ayahuasca 50 times probably still have many times where they feel nervous because you're going into the unknown. You really have no idea what kind of experience you're going to have. And I think that can be scary for a lot of people. And that's why a lot of people are turned off by ayahuasca and other psychedelics, because you really do have to have a deep level of surrender. And as you'll hear shortly, that is a big theme for my first night of ayahuasca. So we go in, we sit on our mats, they open the space, open the ceremony, say a prayer, and we go and drink the first cup. So I drank the first cup, I sat down, and even though I was nervous, I was ready. I had been wanting to drink ayahuasca for a few years at this point, and I finally was here in my first ceremony. And so I sat down, just kind of, chilling, waiting, listening to the music and things, waiting for something to happen. And shortly after I sat down, I did feel the spirit of ayahuasca kind of come to me and just very gently and quietly say hello. And I was essentially telepathically communicating with this plant, and I said, "Hi, I'm a little nervous." And she said, "It's okay. We're just gonna do some cleaning up." After that, I just kind of was sitting there listening to the music, vibing out, and waiting. After a little while had passed, I'm having a good time. I feel, at this point, I'm not feeling anything super crazy or big. It almost felt a little bit like a microdose of mushrooms. That, at least at that point, that was all I had to reference it by. And I'm kind of just sitting here like, okay, when is something gonna happen? I'm waiting. And after a while, I'm just like, damn, like, what's going on? Aren't I supposed to be having some whole process? Aren't I supposed to be like going into my shadows and healing my traumas and things? And nothing was really happening at this point. And I was starting to get like, oh my God, like, did I just come here like for nothing? Is this really gonna be what it's like? I'm not gonna have any sort of experience? So finally the time comes where they are serving the second cup. And I go up to get my second cup and I tell the woman, I'm not really feeling it. And she, I will never forget the look that she gave me. She was like, okay. And she gave me my cup. I drank it. I go and sit down, and almost immediately, like probably within like a minute or two, I'm feeling so nauseous and so uncomfortable. And I just start like, it's like the feeling of nausea where you feel like you want to throw up, but you can't, like you're not throwing up. And then, they had turned off the lights again. The music came back on. And the music started sounding just like horrible. I don't know. There's no way to really explain it, but it was like, it felt like nails on a chalkboard. And I was just thinking, this is absolutely horrible. Like, what is going on? I started seeing the weirdest, creepiest visions. I felt like I couldn't keep my eyes open, but every time I closed my eyes, I was just seeing like weird, dark Candyland visions is kind of the best way to explain it. So I'm having these really creepy visuals. I feel extremely nauseous and just not good at all. And the music is just horrible in my mind. And ayahuasca starts talking to me in a much more aggressive way and saying like, is this what you want? Is this what you wanted? You want it to be hard? Because we can make it hard if this is what you want. And it was incredibly challenging, and I was very much resisting the experience that I was having. And I was just thinking like, oh God, like I just feel so horrible. Like, please, like if I'm gonna throw up, like just let me throw up. Don't make me sit here and just like be nauseous. This is awful. And so that went on for a while. And I knew that I needed to surrender. I had done so much research and watched so many documentaries and listened to so many podcasts about ayahuasca. And the most important thing for anyone to know going into ayahuasca is surrender. And I knew I needed to surrender. But it was like I had to get to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. Like it had to get so bad that I finally allowed myself to surrender. And I remember I kind of just got to this point. I had my eyes closed, but I kind of just went like, oh, I like threw my hands back and was like, all right, ayahuasca, I surrender. Whatever you want to do to me at this point, you got it. I surrender. And right after that, I finally purged. I threw up. And I felt so much better afterwards, a little bit like exhausted, but better. And then my friend Patty came over and she put some Florida water on my neck and sprayed me with rose spray and kissed my forehead. And it was very comforting. And she was like, good job. And I was like, thanks. But really the lesson of that for me was to let go of control. And that is something that I deal with in my day-to-day life, which I think probably many of us do, of trying to control our realities. And it's a lesson that I will always take with me. And I still struggle with that sometimes, feeling like I'm trying to control certain situations. But also during that, ayahuasca was kind of telling me, like, basically, don't tell me how to do my job. Like, I don't come into your job and tell you how to do it. Like, I know what I'm doing. And from that day, I vowed to never try to control ayahuasca or tell her how to do her job ever again. So that was pretty much the whole first night for me. After I purged, I was just like so grateful to be back in the room and be able to open my eyes again. And I was just enjoying the music and vibing and singing and felt really good, actually. So moving on to the second night, I went in fully surrendered. I had no intention. I had no expectations of what was going to happen. And I was just like, all right, Aya, whatever it is that you want to show me, I'm here. Like, if I'm going to have no experience, that's fine. If I'm gonna go super deep, that's fine. Basically, wherever you want to take me, I'm ready. So once again, go in, ceremony starts, drink my first cup. I'm sitting down. I'm just enjoying the music. It was very much like the first night after the first cup. Didn't really feel a whole lot. And I now know that that's actually kind of common. It's a lot of times after the second cup that people end up going super deep. Wish that I had known that the first time, but it's all good. So yeah, I'm sitting there. I'm just enjoying the music and having a good time. And I'm not trying to control it. I'm not having any expectations. I'm like, if this is what it's going to be all night, that's fine. Whatever. So then comes the time for the second cup. And I drink it. And time in this space is really non-existent. I don't know how much time had passed, but after a while, I hear ayahuasca whisper to me, "You're a medicine woman." And I was just like, what? And for those of you who don't know, a medicine woman or medicine man is essentially someone who I like to call a student of the plants. Basically someone who has a deep connection with the plants, someone who has a way of communicating with the plants. So she tells me this, and I am really honestly in disbelief. I am like, no, what are you talking about? Like, me? So I was kind of having this like argument a little bit in my head with ayahuasca. Like, what do you mean? Me, a medicine woman? Like, I don't understand. Like, there's no way, And she just kept saying, like, yes, you are. You already know that you are, and you've been knowing. And I was just like, it was hard for me to, like, really accept in a lot of ways. And I just started crying because I felt so honored, because I know how important this work is. I know how plant medicines and psychedelics are changing the world. And I've actually been really hesitant to claim this title or talk about it. And there is a part of me that feels a little bit nervous for people to hear this, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm like one of those people who's just like, oh, I drank ayahuasca one time and I'm a shaman now. But it's not necessarily that. I have had a connection with the plants, especially like mushrooms, and mushrooms is probably the main one, for a few years, and they have a very special place in my heart, and I do feel this sense of communication with them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to go and serve ayahuasca one day. Like I said, it just means that I am a student of the plants, and I am here to learn from them and really, hopefully, bring some of their teachings to the world. And I want you to know that I do take this work very, very seriously. I know how important it is, and I know how important it is also to be in integrity and to not let your ego get the best of you, because that is a dangerous situation. I have seen it where medicine people can get too much in their ego, and it's a really dangerous thing, if you ask me. That's a whole other conversation for another day, but I want you to know that I take this very seriously. And like I said, I've been very shy to even claim this title or really talk about it, because I don't want people to judge me, and I don't want people to think that I'm just one of those like weird hippie people who's like, I drank plant medicine and now I'm a shaman. Like, no. I really did not even expect it, honestly. And that seems to be a big theme for a lot of the medicine people that I've met, is they never once expected that they were going to be on this path. And then the plants were just like, hey, this is who you are. This is what you're here for, or at least part of it. Anyway, so back into my journey. I am just crying, and I feel so honored, because I know how important this work is. I know the way that plant medicine, psychedelics are changing the world and have the power to change the world. And I know that they must be used with reverence and honor and respect, especially by the people who are facilitating them. So after I finally came to a place of acceptance, okay, I'm a medicine woman. I'm gonna claim this. I felt the need to lay down, and ayahuasca took me on this journey through the jungle. It was so cute and so beautiful. It felt like she was like a child showing me where she comes from. She was like, this is where I come from. And I don't obviously remember a lot of the visuals that I had, but I remember seeing like bugs climbing up a tree and a face of a jaguar, and yeah, just like this journey through the jungle, kind of showing me where her home is. And I'm very, very grateful for that. It really felt like a good introduction to ayahuasca. I also forgot to mention that when ayahuasca was telling me you're a medicine woman, she was saying like, that's why you didn't have an experience the first cup on the first night, because I'm trying to show you that there's a reason you feel comfortable in a space like this, in a ceremony space. Just wanted to add that because I just remembered. So that was pretty much the gist of my experience or my journey on the second night. And yeah, after I was done going on a ride through the jungle, I sat up, I listened to the music, I sang along, I played my rattle with them, and I just had such a good time, and I felt so good, and it really felt like such a revelation that this is part of my path, the path of the plants, as I call it, and I am truly grateful and honored to be a student of these plants, and I think that we can all be a student of these plants if we so choose. But I also think that the path of the medicine person isn't something that you necessarily seek out. It is an honor that is given to you. And I think that for people who do choose to seek out this path, a lot of times, maybe not every time, a lot of times it can be very egoic. And yeah, that is just my perspective. I'm constantly learning, constantly changing and evolving, and my opinion is constantly changing and evolving. So take it as you will. Judge me if you'd like. Think I'm crazy, that's fine. But this is my experience and this is my truth. So that's all for today. I really appreciate you listening. I hope that my experience helped you or was interesting at least. And on the next episode, I'm actually going to be talking about my second ayahuasca experience. So stay tuned for that. I really hope you enjoyed, and I love you so much. Have a great day. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment letting me know how you liked this episode. And if you have topic suggestions for future episodes, feel free to leave them in the comments there. If you're listening on a podcasting platform, it would really help me out if you could leave me a nice review, letting me know how you like the podcast so far. Thank you so much and stay blessed.